Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a few terrific days ahead of you. In today's edition of Transfer Plans, I've got for you one which I wasn't really expecting. There's a lot more depth to my transfer plans this time around in comparison to what there was looking to be maybe just a couple of days ago, given the events of Game Week 4, which makes for a more interesting video, right? And it makes for a more interesting game. So that's always good. In addition to that, I've got a Game Week review, which will certainly be interesting because there's some talking points there. And of course, 4 pieces of FPL match analysis from this weekend. Not much else to say apart from that. As always, appreciate the support. If you could drop a like on the video, if you could hype the video, which is just a swipe right from the comment section, and subscribe if you enjoy it, I'd be greatly appreciative. But without anything else needing to be said, let's get into it. For the second time this season, an excitement stemmed from the fact that I could very well be tweeting Cell Supremacy for the first time in a long time. But again, it wasn't to be. The goal was one I thought he should have saved, the first one. He plants his foot in a slightly different place to the one he'd probably want. In the wrong plantation of the foot, he has a moment, just a little moment of hesitation. By the time, and then the time it takes from there to extend himself fully again to try and get down to it, there just wasn't enough time. The ball zips off the surface. Very good placement. And he concedes. And then obviously after that, Sangare makes he commits another foul to give away a penalty, one he really didn't need to do. But I was quite happy about that. I looked at it and I was like, okay, well, if he saves his penalty, he's guaranteed bonus. And all of a sudden, I get 8 points from it. That's effectively the 2 clean sheets, minus what other bonus I would have got, which would have been a decent amount. But it wasn't to be. Paquetá puts it away well. And that he actually has good penalty saving technique, by the way, Matt Sells. So I was even more excited about that. And then Juve just gets one, puts one on Callum Wilson's head, but that is particularly irrelevant for FPL. Whereas defensively, I mean, they didn't look that bad against Brentford. They didn't look that bad against Palace. They didn't look that bad. Like, yeah, he had some big saves to make. There were just a few moments. But overall, they looked pretty solid today until the 80th minute. Solid enough. Just not meant to be at the moment. Last year, Game Week 4, he got one away at Anfield. And I love that. It was one of my favourite moments of the season. One of my favourite games of the season because I got to watch that along. So who knows? Maybe Game Week 4 will be the turning point for him away at the Emirates. But for now, just a 2-pointer. There was no way I could do this section without having a specific midfielder that's there, and that's Josh King. And I guess I must thank you. Because if it wasn't for your passionate comments, then I wouldn't have probably reconsidered the decision in the depth that I did. And I would be sat here with 4 points less. Now, had you not done that, and VAR did its job well in the moment, then I would have gained a lot more points. But you know, in the end, I get very, very, very lucky. Cucurella keeps a clean sheet, one away from DEFCON, similar to Kirkes this week. But, you know, keeps it, and all is well. And Josh King doesn't get his first goal, and I only have to look at a 2-pointer on my bench. So I guess I must thank you for that. In terms of how he played, we'll come on to that more in the match analysis section. He's still a threat from set pieces, but with this system, he's just not much of a threat from open play at all, really. Very, very limited opportunities. More so than Kirkes in his system, but very limited opportunities. So we will see what comes, but I doubt Maresca uses Gusto in every game, right? Reece is our best defender. So he'll definitely come back in, especially in those lock-up games. We'll probably go back to a diamond midfield, and he'll probably start crashing the box and doing all sorts of things that we've spoken about in the future. So going forward, great. And you know what? He's gone 8-5-6 in the climate as it is. That is magnificent. And the best defender in the game is showing his worth. Kirkes, 8-pointer. Delighted with this because obviously first game week bench him, so I don't really care. Second game week, only 1-pointer. But considering I played 6 million, really nice to have some early returns on investments. One away from a DEFCON as well, but that's okay. That happens. We'll speak about him individually in the match analysis section as well. But I didn't think the performance was particularly good. And if Arsenal's attacking dynamics were a little bit better and Madueke got a little bit luckier in a moment or was just a little bit sharp in one moment, I think he really could have hurt Kirkes. So whilst for now his spot looks safe, let's say they sign Mark Gahey and he wants to do something where Szoboszlai is going to push into midfield from right back, all of a sudden you could see a flat 3 of Van Dijk, who's been unbelievable, by the way, Konate, channel defender, and Gahey, who's so well suited to being that left centre-back channel defending type role, then honestly, I don't see why he should definitely start. I think your spot should definitely be up for grabs, especially if Gahey signs, right? Because even in a back four off the ball, he can play left back and he can do it competently. So that's something I'll have to consider. But at least for Burnley, it should be okay. And then probably Everton as well. And then from there, he might be sold. Neko, I mean, same as Sells, right? He was actually on for 3 bonus just before or 2 bonus just before they conceded. But it is what it is. No biggie. His final third actions just lack a little bit of something. So the route to attacking points there is a little bit challenging. But then again, I guess with Murillo and Milenkovic not looking particularly dangerous from set pieces and the fact they're not getting DEFCON, the 0.5 save here was cool. And then Aït-Nouri, I mean, I barely caught the City game, but I heard he made a big chance for Haaland. Haaland should have scored, so no assist there. Then they concede, and then he gets the yellow card, and then they concede again. So the points just go one by one. But, that's the game. It is what it is, and that's okay. I'm happy enough with my decision to start. Maybe I should have started King and Cucurella together. Maybe I should have started Marlon, who I know is starting tonight. But it is what it is, and hopefully the swing's not too big. Now that we've spoken about the most important midfielder in Josh King, we can speak about the second most important one in this team this week. And that is Matthias Cunha. These things happen, right? You're going to bring someone in, they're going to be a differential, and they're going to get injured. All right, cool, no problem. Not much to say apart from that. Obviously, if you don't own him, enjoy it, right? Like, it's a good moment for you guys. Enjoy it. I hope he's back soon. I hope, most importantly, he has a speedy recovery and he's okay. And if not, then I will think about selling him, as I'll speak about in transfer plans. It wasn't so much that he only got a 1-pointer, right? Because, for example, Wood failed. It was more so that, just Wood failed because the other guys returned. It was more so that Bruno got 10 and I didn't own him, so it's 20. So it's an 18-point swing there. That was the real big deal about this. Otherwise, this is a much, much better week, right? It was okay. I'm happy with the score, happy with the team as it stands, but then it's a much better week. But these things happen, okay, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. Who knows, this could work in my favor down the line. Then going on to the best midfielder in this team, Iliman Ndiaye. I mean, gets another goal. Had a disallowed goal right at the second half due to offside, and I heard at times he could have been slipped in a little bit more as well. Everton should have been a little bit more killer-like, bit more ruthless. And on another day, we're looking at Hull. Now, the one thing with him is, because of the way Everton are attacking, and Grealish is bossing the park, bonus point system hasn't been great for him. So yeah, he's got 2 goals, but then you'd expect a little bit more. Like, I'd be expecting a bonus point here or there. So I guess for non-owners, that's the good thing, right? Even if he does keep ticking along, unless he starts to haul, there's not too much damage. But then again, at the price, he's been marvelous, and I'm really happy with the selection. And Salah, I mean, honestly, I thought Calafiori had a really good game. I thought Calafiori had a really good game against Leeds, and he's looked really good this season. So, thought he did a bit of a job on Salah. Salah himself, I mean, as we spoke about in last week's content, suboptimal attacking dynamics for him. Really can't put it all on him. I mean, not too much supply from the right back, doesn't have the overlaps from Szoboszlai, even the underlaps he doesn't really have. He doesn't really have the 8 supplying him either. And even Ekitike's natural preferences is to drift to the left. So he's isolated. He's so isolated, right? And this is almost like, right, what Arne Slot had in some similarity. I'm just talking about the right winger when he was at Feyenoord with his right wing wide, restricted to the touchline, which Salah doesn't really have as much, but isolated, right? And then that's where the narrative came from that, he may struggle with attacking returns, but obviously the system and dynamics were tweaked last year, right? For him. This season, not so much, and you're seeing the effect of that. Not as much against Bournemouth, even less against Newcastle, and even in a way, even less today as well, if not close. So that's that. We'll see what Marlon does. I mean, look, maybe I could have considered that he was going to... I did consider that he was going to start, and I just didn't want to take the punt. So whatever he does, that's all good. That's the midfield. Move on to the forward line, which looks much more pleasant than that. And one reason it looks so pleasant is that the best forward in the game, he just keeps going. After his 15-pointer against West Ham, a 9-pointer, and you know what? He should have had more. I mean, I was expecting 1 penalties. Enzo took it, but that I don't really care about, right? We didn't know. Cool, whatever. There was a chance in the second half where he tried to go around Leno, and he really should be scoring from there. There was a chance in the second half where he took a snapshot, maybe a little bit more time, stung the palms of Leno. There was a time where Esteval definitely should have played him in, just like West Ham. And there was one other time he should have been played in as well, right? So I thought, and then he scored the goal in the first half as well, so you've got to add that up. We didn't play well in the first half, and we'll come to that. But yeah, I thought he could have had more. So going forward, I just feel so good about this option. I mean, for me at 7.5, the best forward in the game. The value you're getting is just unbelievable. And he looks unbelievable. He looks so good. And this will be one of our best signings. Not just this year, because this is definitely our best signing of the season so far, but for a while to come. And when you look at the past as well, just top player. And so cheap for what he's giving you. Evan Nilsson should have scored another one, but, 8-pointer from him away at Spurs. Really good. And like we discussed, Bournemouth, these are their type of games. And they bossed the game in the first half, right? These are their type of games. They almost function with an inverse FDR. And they really do, right? Because even against Arsenal, think about the games last season. Arsenal don't get to sit in that mid-block like they did against Liverpool today. Bournemouth are so forceful with their approach. They're so insistent on playing that way that you are going to engage in their type of game more than you would like. And their attack is so very well suited to playing the quote-unquote bigger teams as opposed to having to break down a block continuously again and again and again, right? They want a game where they're in more of a battle as opposed to them solely being the protagonist. That's great, right? That's really good for Bournemouth because they've got some of those fixtures coming up, including that of Newcastle fairly soon. Woods, don't really have much positive things to say as an FPL asset. As we'll come on to the transfer plans, I mean, expecting it at 70? 70's early. Like, you're not meant to be taken off at 70 when you're the main number 9 like that early, right? And I did that because you've got Ego Jesus. You've got a young man who's come from the French league who's done superbly well there, who they've paid a big fee for. He's not using two strikers in the same system really at all. They've got Europe coming, and you've just got to consider, even with Burnley away and Sunderland at home after Arsenal away, right, which is the first hurdle, is he worth it? Because maybe he just gets benched one game. It's such a real possibility, especially if he's not in form, especially if he doesn't have a good game at the Emirates, right? So these are things I'm considering. We'll speak about in more depth in transfer plans. In terms of his performance today, I mean, he had one big chance I thought he should have done much better with at the end, or at the start of the second half. That was about it, really. I mean, Forest had some issues, which were challenges that we will discuss. And yeah, that's about it. 48 points from this team is, and will, relative to the field, is cool. I mean, between Cucurella, Kirkes getting clean sheets, João Pedro, Evan Nilsson, and Ninjail scoring, and, well, I guess Wood was still fairly low EO, you would probably expect a bigger green arrow. Naturally, it was the captaincy swing where you lose about 18 over a lot of the field, don't even own Bruno full stop. That made it a smaller green arrow, but, is what it is. That's all good. And I'm happy with the team. And for now, I'm still happy with the rank. I think when you look at it compared to other engaged managers, it's solid enough, right? Like I said, going forward, I like the team, the chip shoes, so that will all work out, I think, wonderfully well. And I hope you had a terrific weekend in terms of FPL. Not the best performance from Chelsea, not the worst either, for reasons we shall discuss now. Firstly, if you look at our build-up last season, we have Levi Colwell. Not only has he got great passing ability, but he also has that positive intent where he wants to look for it a bit more. He's also a good carrier, and he's aggressive enough to step up, right? In Cucurella, whilst he's good in many regards, we don't really have that. And nor are we getting that so much from our central centre-back either. So, we're losing out in that regard. Secondly, when we use this system, and Enzo Fernandez is functioning more as a box-to-box midfielder, as opposed to a slightly deeper role where he's compensating for the fact that Palmer's at the top of the diamond, he's less accessible in build-up, and that causes, at times, numerical inferiority, right? Because the opposition can go with a 3-2, and if that's the case, it's 5 against 4 in the build-up. So that's something to consider, and it can be a little bit harder to get out in that sense. Secondly, and maybe more important, no, I would say definitely more importantly, breaking a block like Fulham's, who are very well coached. Well, it is very well coached. They have a lot of 1v1 defensive quality and just general player quality, and are very, very physical. One of the most physical sides in the league. And you look at our dynamics, and Pedro Neto as a left winger in transition, and in games which are a bit more basketball-like and quick, right, in terms of the attacks, I love it. I think he's got a great relationship with Palmer as well, when Palmer has to pull to that side, and he's looked really good in that sense. But against the block, not as much. You want a slightly different, more associative, creative type, right? So here, that's a little bit of a challenge. Secondly, Malagusto is great for Cole Palmer, right, when you want to get him into his preferred zones, and Esteval as well. But in isolation, aside from that, you're not getting too much again from him to break the block. It increases the likelihood of Palmer Esteval doing something, but aside from that, you're reducing what you're getting from another player, right? Which I understand to maximize your best creative, but you are losing so much from that function, right? Especially because he's not left-footed, so it's harder for him to do things when he's so wide on the right. It's a very rare thing nowadays to be good wide on the right as a right footer, which is funny because Alejandro Garnacho is one of the best at that. There's one reason I'm looking forward to seeing him play. The other thing is with the system, the spacing between players can be a little bit large at times, and against such a compact block, to crash it for Enzo, well, it's not going to be that easy at all for a variety of reasons. First, you've got to get the ball in there at a time where he can actually receive and get something off, and just think about how many players there are in the middle. And then secondly, like, he's still got to get there in the first place. There's so many bodies blocking the lanes in front of him, and then even going into the box as well. So that's that. Fulham's attack in transition is one where I've thought for a while they could improve, specifically on their right-hand side. Obviously, they're using a back five effectively with Castagna this time around, but whether it be through a different right wing back or a different type of profile, or using a right winger just in general, I think it could really help them. And they have signed a new winger, right? I think they just need a runner, right? Someone to go in behind a bit more, because Muniz and Jimenez probably want to be a bit more associative and hold up and put it into them. Iwobi's a really good carrier passer. You want a runner, right? You want that a bit more. Obviously, Josh King did it really well for the goal, or disallowed goal in the middle, but that was a very specific type of instance where he was the last man and it was good timing. And Marcus was done really well. I think he's platformed him beautifully because he's not the strongest, right? He's obviously a young guy. And in the press, he's often the highest man. And even like out of possession in deeper stages, he's still been the highest man against United and here. So you're almost taking that away, but you still want someone to stretch on that right side. Maybe go into King and then you can go into the winger from there. And then João Pedro, I mean, he's so good, right? And it's all the things we spoke about preseason. So multi-dimensional. And he offers us so much. So watching him has been an absolute pleasure, and I'm very happy to own him. I cut it there, but I should probably speak about the second half, because in the second half we were better. Why were we better? Well, they were more open, right? After the goal, the penalty goal that we scored, they had to take more risk. They had to be more open. And when they do that, we're better, right? Because our team is built, that specific 11 is built for that more so. But when we come up against Palace again, when we come up against a really stubborn Forest side, when we play Fulham again, then you want slightly different dynamics. So that's United's on the ball and just something to do with their attack. Off the ball, I mean, we've still seen these issues persist with the 5-2-3. It's not all Amarin's fault, as I will come to with the attack specifically, because, for example, Lenny Euro doesn't step, Bayern makes a mistake, and what can he do about that, right? But it's definitely a structure that is causing it to be harder for them to defend really well and limit the number of opportunities that the opposition gets. Why there's nothing in addition to that, in addition to that, I'm not entirely sure. So we'll just move on swiftly. One thing I do want to speak about with United going forward, and this is particularly relevant to FPL, is it's not just Ruben Amorim's fault, the attack. Yes, he chooses the team. Yes, he's using a structure that most of us don't like. He sets, I guess, the culture in the dressing room. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know, because I haven't been in there, irrespective of what the media says. But aside from that, he isn't the one on the pitch who's putting the ball in the back of the net. He cannot do anything if his players are missing chances again and again and again, or so it would appear. He also cannot do anything if in those duels with the second ball, it always just goes the opposition's way, and it's always just 0.5 of a centimetre away from being perfect for United, and so on, right? And with Manchester United and with Ruben Amorim, they've had a lot of bad luck. Like, in that final third especially, it just never seems to sit right, or the player misses the chance, and so on. And look, you can blame him partially, but it's not like it's just him at this club. It's been many managers post-Fergie for a serious length of time, right? And it's not like it's bad players. We've seen a lot of quality players come here and just fail. There seems to be this black cloud over the club at the moment, and for them to just get over the line seems like such a challenge, right? And the goals just aren't flowing, and those moments seem to always go against them in general, right? Obviously, not 100 out of 100 are going to go against them. So this is just something to consider going forward. Even when it looks good for them, they might just have to do a little bit extra for that black cloud that may be over their head. Forest, I mean, we've spoken about this quite a bit. I mean, this team is very much set up to hurt a team, an opposition team in transition. And against these blocks, the starting 11 currently isn't as well orientated to breaking it down. And what West Ham did today is they presented Forest with their least favourable setup, because I think if you're going to go against Forest, you probably want to use a 4 as opposed to a 5 at the back. And they struggled. I mean, they really didn't make too many chances. Yeah, they had a lot of the ball in the first half. Yeah, West Ham were under pressure, but it was pressure in not in and around the box too much. Is in front of the defensive line. The defensive line won't be tested too much. Dan and Joy versus Juve early on, yeah, maybe. But Wood wasn't getting on the end of a lot. He wasn't having much created for him. And it was only really Callum Hudson-Odoi that looked a bit dangerous. But Neco-Williams, like I've spoken about in the team review section, you're not getting too much out of him in the final third. Ola Aina's advancements are certainly less than that of last year. Gibbs White is amazing when he's carrying and the releases from those carries. But as a pure creative passer, high up from a more stagnant position against this type of block, again, not that type. Jan and Joy, again, not that type. So in my community, I actually tweeted literally 10 seconds before James McAtee appeared on screen that they could bring him on the right, and that would give him a different dynamic. But even still, when you're not getting much from the 10 in this particular scenario, nor the 9, nor the fullbacks, that's going to be really challenging, right? And the reason I bring this up is with this emphasis. If it's one game, okay, no problem. But you could see this continuing because the system doesn't change, you don't get too much from Maina. Neco-Williams has been a professional footballer at this level for a while. He's probably not going to change overnight and become instantly a lot more dangerous, right? Yeah, okay, Callum Hudson-Odoi is definitely good in this regard, but with all due respect, he's not elite. And I'm not trying to take away anything from him, but there are better wingers out there, like Lamine Yamal, when it comes to creativity. And then Gibbs White, again, this isn't like his bread and butter role. And Woods, after the first, 10 minutes against Palace, didn't look as sharp as I would like, didn't look too sharp today either. Maybe goes on a bit of a decline and then he gets rotated and so on, right? So going forward, it's definitely something to consider when they have to play these type of teams because maybe it persists, right? Brentford were actually more open in that first 20 to 30 minutes where Forest, or that first half in general, where Forest battered them, right? There was just a lot more space. Whereas West Ham today, they were much better. And one shout out I want to give in particular because Lucas Paquetá was superb today, especially with all the transfer news and what he went through last season. He was top today and he's been good this season, so good on him. I thought I only right that whilst this is FPL match analysis and we're not looking at West Ham assets, we give them a little bit of light as well. Bowen is just a really good footballer and he's just honestly going to keep cropping up with goals for this club because he's just top. He's just quality and he's got the personality as well to match where he turns up in these moments. There's a reason he scored their European Cup winning goal and so on. And look what he did for them at the back end of last season and what he's done for them so many times before. Somerville is someone who he has a lot of ability. So if you get him going, he can cause opposition defensive problems. Callum Wilson, we all know when he's fit, he's gone. You've got Paquetá. And who knows, with the inclusion of Matthias Fernandes, maybe they've just got a lot better. They've signed another 6. Maybe he really improves the side because they still need another 6. And, it could be better for them. So going forward, and I spoke about this midweek, maybe with the inclusion of Matthias Fernandes, it may not be something where you just look to target them. And this was spoken about earlier in the week. I said maybe by game week 4. I didn't expect him playing by game week 3. But he's already shown the impact, right? So, yeah. Palace have them in 5, for example. Maybe you're looking at their assets, maybe not. But nonetheless, it's certainly not what it appeared to be following Friday Night Football. A game that I would describe as interesting, but not particularly exciting. I wasn't out of my seat like, wow, this is the best football game I've ever watched and screaming because there was attack after attack after attack. But with the challenges the teams pose each other and the dynamics in general, I thought there was a lot to pick apart and it was interesting. Like I said, we'll start with Liverpool's attacking dynamics and how they're very atypical for the modern era. What you see so much of now is positional play, right, within teams. 3-5, 3-6, wingers who are restricted in their roles, right? You're going to stay wide. You're going to essentially function like a bounce pass from these wide areas so that we can bring it inside easier and more often and always have that option available, which is safer. It increases ball retention. You aren't going to run beyond the last line as much when you're not going to come inside and so on, right? But with Liverpool, like, for example, with Salah, yeah, okay, he stays on the right-hand side. And yeah, okay, you don't see him in the box too much. But it's still, there's enough freedom there. With Wirtz, there's freedom that he can go between the first 2 lines or the midfield line and the defensive line, right? He can pull to the left, he can pull to the right. Ekitike is not just situated as a 9, but even in a similar fashion to Havertz, pulls into these less 8-like zones like Havertz does, pulls into these deeper areas on the left-hand side. Gakpo probably has the most restrictive of them all, but still he comes inside a lot, right, in a way that Martinelli doesn't. And then they don't send so many players to overload the last line that so many other teams do, regardless if they're breaking a block or not, and so on, right? So it's very atypical for the modern era because you don't see so much of that. It's very quality reliant, okay? It's very much reliant on, we're going to put the ball into Verts, he can carry, he can create. Salah, Gakpo, Salah obviously just everything. Gakpo coming inside, and when he comes inside, whether that be from a wide area or he's already in that half space, and then he gets the action off. Cross, pass, shot, really competent with that. Ekitike, very associative, obviously, therefore can combine well. Decent ball striking, good in the box, strong, impressive balance, I'd say, especially like when he's being associative for someone at his height. So I guess that feeds into why he's so good. So maybe null and void. But like I said, very atypical, and they've got a lot of quality, right? And they rely on that to create goals. Now, whether this is something that's sustainable throughout the season, well, we'll see. I would like a bit of a change. I think this current crop of 4, in terms of quality, yeah, they might have it. But if one misfires, like Verts is currently doing, then all of a sudden it becomes a lot harder, right? And that's why they're probably not looking as dangerous as they could have been. Against lesser sides, right, with all due respect, yeah, okay, I think you can do this more. But in this game, in Newcastle, I personally would prefer something to change, and we can speak about the change at another time, maybe with one of the IB videos. Kirker's got me an 8-pointer, picked up 9 DEFCON, and on paper that looks great. I personally, from a defensive perspective, really didn't like what I saw today. There was one particular instance, right, and it happened a fair few times, but there's one particular instance, second half, Madueke got the ball at a decent distance from the box, and he just backed off him, and he backed off him, and Madueke kept going and going and going. And if that was Saka, or Madueke just had a little bit of a better moment, and to be fair to Madueke, it's not like he's got a right back helping him. It's not like the right-sided 8 in Marino was helping him too much with this, and he didn't get much from Gyökeres here either, in terms of what he could have done, like putting it into him. So he was restricted. But on another day, him or another right winger, they could have hurt Kirkes for backing off so much, right? So repeatedly and at such a distance. And I think this could be exploited. Another thing is when they went long to Madueke and in behind in particular, Kirkes defensively in terms of like the speed wasn't great. And then he's not putting the challenge in anyway. So you're always pretty much going to get deeper and deeper and closer to that Liverpool goal. So that's something to consider. And Verts, I've spoken about this. I still don't think he's found that 6th gear that in the Premier League, when you get the ball, it's just got to be a bit quicker. I don't think he's felt the league yet in terms of its intensity. I think Arnie Slot might have even said, I saw it on X, maybe someone made it up, but he said after Verts' cramping, essentially, welcome to the Premier League, right? Because it's a step up physically. And I don't think he's adjusted yet. He's got the quality. I don't think mentally he's adjusted yet, though. There's nothing wrong with him as a player in terms of the physical. Mental, for me. That's how I see it. And just that. And when he eventually feels the Premier League more, and when he feels it more, and he does a couple of actions in a game, and all of a sudden that confidence springs from it, then I think from there you'll see someone much better. Szoboszlai was just unbelievable. And the free kick was really just this time it can't be the cherry on the cake because it was so good. Maybe it's got to be a whole layer plus a cherry. But yeah, he was just unbelievable. The passing range on display, some of the passes here, especially the one in the first half, cross pitch, wow. Defensively, so solid. Did you see him lose a single duel? Pretty much no. Got an unbelievable engine on him. Very intelligent. Can come inside, can overlap, so on and so on, right? He didn't overlap much for Salah, but he could function in wide areas. So good. Like that, it was really, really, really good. And hats off to him, right? Moving on to Arsenal. If you look at their firepower from the starting lineup, it's not one where you expect them to create moments by themselves. For example, between Verts, Gakpo, Ekitike, and Salah, if the game's in a bit of a lull or it's not going so well, I know I can rely on them just to produce me one bit of magic in a moment. But you compare that to Arsenal, Gyökeres, for example, yeah, okay, when he has space in behind and in transition, he can hurt. But you putting it into him, and when he doesn't have that, Van Dijk and Konate, you weren't expecting much, and you didn't get much. Martinelli had a poor game, and it's a role that's really not suited to him, but still had a poor game. Madueke was good, but I thought it was partially Kirkes being bad as well. And then when your 8s are Rice and Marino, there's no creativity really there, right? You want maybe to go into them long and then win a second ball and score a scrappy goal like that. But the actual attacking firepower, not so much there. Now, I know Saka's injured, but he's injured for a little while, so we've got to consider that. I know Odegaard was on the bench, but he's definitely had his issues, especially in games like this, which are so intense, right? Getting him on the ball in the pockets and hurting teams is so difficult. Hasn't been happening. And the other thing is, in transition, not the best weapon. But even if he was playing, I don't think it would have been a huge improvement. Obviously, came on and the game looks a little bit different, but that's coming on at 70. That should happen partially due to everyone else being a bit tired. So honestly, I thought he could have just unleashed Eze. Even maybe like in a slightly different system if you wanted to tweak it, just to give him a bit, because I think they were really relying on getting a little bit lucky, having a winning a second ball, getting a shot off, a moment like that. Whereas Liverpool, they had roots to goals, right? So that's something to consider. And it's not like you're getting too much from the right back, I guess. So Madueke really is just going one-on-one again and again and again due to the choice of 8. That's why I spoke about it earlier. I mean, Calafiori looked really good today. He's looked really good this season. The role is one where he's certainly going to pick up attacking returns, but the relationship with Martinelli hasn't really blossomed yet. And that was another reason I thought he could have just picked Eze, because see, even the thing is, like, Martinelli's not going to be running on behind too much, just given the fact that Liverpool aren't what they were under Jurgen Klopp at the start, right? And he's shot of confidence, it would appear to me. So yeah, I thought he could have made some different choices, and Arsenal's firepower was a little bit lacking here. Semenyo would be a great fix for this because he can play on the left and the right. And yeah, that's about it from the Liverpool-Arsenal game relating to FPL transfer plans. And a really interesting transfer plans, because not only are there so many routes I can take through the players on the screen, but there's also a wild card to potentially consider and a free hit, either of which I'll likely be doing, but it'll serve a very interesting discussion, and I'm sure you may potentially be pressing one of those buttons. Now, if you're considering doing it tonight, I would personally advise no. I think at the moment, the community is a little bit trigger happy with their chips. From my perspective, the importance of these chips down the line, when it's going to be difficult to navigate every game week optimally, whereas we can do that partially for now, that's going to make it so much more challenging down the line. And if you don't have a chip in your back pocket, I think the upside you're going to miss and the downside you won't be able to protect is immense, right? And you just look at the 13 fixture swing as an example for the wildcard, huge. Even something like 6, 7, 8, if you want to triple up on Arsenal, and you're having to restructure so much with the current landscape of FPL, so many players misfiring. They're not really being a template, so you're having to like chop and change quite a bit to almost find it and guess it again and again and again. You're not having many transfers, and it's going to be harder to bail yourself out down the line. So I really would consider, especially when you're gaming one squad, probably wasn't that bad. All right, maybe you want to take out some of the Villa boys, maybe you want to take out this player, that player, right? Okay, you can get rid of them, but you probably made some good selections. Whereas down the line, I think you could be in big trouble. Hits aren't that bad. Just a 4-pointer. Especially if you've got like 2 frees, 3 transfers, probably sorts a lot of your squad's issues out. That's the chip talk. Moving back to my transfer plans, everything interrelates with each other, right? Because if Matthias Cunha's injury is a short-term one, and come the Game Week 4 deadline, just prior to that, I feel good about Chris Wood, and I'm happy to play Daniel Marlon, well, then I can bench Neko and play 3-4-3, right? Great. And I'll be able to roll for Game Week 5 and have 2 frees for that. How magnificent. Brilliant. However, let's say it's a long-term injury, and let's say I really don't like Wood by the time we're getting closer and closer to 4, or Daniel Marlon is just not a play, right, for Game Week 4 and beyond. Well, then I almost have to make a transfer. And who could I bring in? Well, one, I could bring in Alexander Isak, and if I were to do so, maybe I just play 4-3-3 with double Forest defense away at Arsenal. Not the end of the world. Maybe get some DEFCON because he'll be up against Madueke, who'll go at him again and again and again. Maybe he'll keep a clean sheet like they did away at Anfield last season. Arsenal's attack still isn't flourishing in a way that you would want as a fan. That's that. And one big thing in there is I spoke about, Alexander Isak. The window's closed, right, by the time we get to Game Week 4. And it would have been closed for a while. He's either going to be at Newcastle and they will have Wolves at home. Now, if he's at Newcastle, what's he going to do? Just not play for the entirety of the months of September, October, November, hoping, like, with no guarantee of a move in Jan? See, I don't think he'd do that. If he's stuck there, I think he'll end up playing, right? And they'll maybe work something out, but I think he'll end up playing. And if he is playing, Wolves at home, Bournemouth away is interesting for a striker. And his quality in that Newcastle side, super interesting. And I can afford it, right? I've got 2.9 in the bank. I can go from Chris Wood. So yeah, that could be really interesting. If I wasn't to sell Chris Wood and Matthias Cunha's injury is looking a bit longer, well, then he can go and he can go to anyone. Who knows? Maybe Cole Palmer. If he's back fit, playing in that system where Gusto's on the right, facilitating that right 10 type of role as opposed to top of the diamond, maybe he's really interesting. Brentford just lost to Sunderland. If not, if he's looking like he's only out for a couple of weeks, I'm like, all right, fine. You know what? I'll keep Wood for 4 and 5. I'll just stick him in the side for the game at Arsenal. But you know what? No, I don't want Daniel Marlin. Well, then I can basically take him to like anyone. I've got 2.9. He's what, 5.3. Okay, so I get 8.2. Okay, yeah, I can't afford Verts for Burnley anyway. But apart from that, and I can't afford Bruno, who I don't want anyway, I can basically go anywhere. So those are the things I'm considering. Going forward, I need to really prep for game week 6. Otherwise, I might have to take a hit. I have no interest of holding Salah over Haaland in game week 6 because he has Burnley at home and Salah has the death fixture of Palace away. I mean, going there and trying to break that down and score against that, so challenging. So challenging. I also don't really want Kirkes from 6, right? So that's another player that I will potentially have to consider selling. I also don't really want double Forest defense from 7, sorry. So I've got to have transfers to that. I do want some Arsenal players. It's not just Haaland. And so on, right? So maybe I'll buy Reinders in preparation, right? Since game week 1, as I discussed, that it could potentially happen. He hasn't looked as good. Today, to be fair, he could have got a goal at the end of the game and he could have got an assist. But Brighton were quite open, and I don't think all the sides that they play will be as open as that, at least in the first half. So those are all these things I'm considering. Cunha out, Marlin out, Wood out, Isak in, Reinders in, Haaland in eventually, Salah out. But then, am I really going to have all the transfers to be able to do that? Probably not. Something else may come up. It probably will. So then I'll have to think about, okay, maybe I will forego Arsenal assets and so on and so on. And you can see how many things could change. And you could see how so many different players could become template and do well. And how useful it could be to have a wildcard. What if by the time we do get to 8 and a free hit? What if by the time we get to 8, that fixture swing is looking so tasty? Those guys look really good. The Arsenals and so on. And I'm like, you know what? I just got a wildcard out. And 13, what I'll do is I will do my very, very best to roll between now and 13. I will even use my free hit to ensure that one game week I'm completely optimized for, and I can use my free transfers to work around that and keep going to 13. And then in 16, just 3 game weeks later, I'll have 5, right? So maybe I can do that. Maybe I'll wildcard in 13 and so on. But down the line, when we have more clarity and moving into a solid structure, with the ability to then roll frees, knowing in 16 you're going to get 5, knowing you have a bailout and free hit for, so powerful. Because these are some of my challenges, but you might have a router that you don't like. You might still have a Palmer. You might have a Cunha. You might have Watkins, who you may not like if he didn't score a hat-trick tonight, and so on and so on and so on, right? So yeah, that's what I'm looking at. And that's what I think you could potentially be considering as well. And the free hit, right, second last thing, the free hit is so good. Because not only is it giving you upside in one particular week, maximum upside through an optimized team, not only is it protecting the downside from that week because you don't have players that aren't very good and other people do. What it also does is it means for that week where you'd want particular players, you don't have to gear your team for that way, especially if it's a one-off. I'll give you an example. Let's say Fulham are... No, that's not the best example because Fulham aren't great against those type of sides. Let's say Arsenal, just argument's sake, right, have really tough fixture runs, as they do. But in between that, like they did with Leeds, okay, they have a really good promoted fixture. And that's probably an example of this with one team. All of a sudden, I can take 3 of them for that week and not have them either side. Imagine the transfers you're going to save and the upside you have available to you. It's not only a double-edged, it's a triple-edged, quadruple-edged sword, right, with all the things I've discussed. And that's why I really urge you to consider not free hitting in full. Because I look at it, and you probably have Salah, okay? You can bring in another Liverpool attacker. You may even have some Palace. And aside from that, there's not too much upside that you're not going to have, right? There's not too much. Okay, all right, fine, you might not have some Newcastle, but they still haven't fired. And not trying to time the bottom is not a bad thing. And you know, Sunderland are on 6 points for a reason. Maybe Palace don't just blow them away, right? I think it could be so much more useful down the line. And the template's really not that bad. So these are all things to consider. And the last one was going back to my team again. Overall, I still think it's quite solid. Ait-Nouri long-term, Cucurella long-term, Sells long-term. Okay, so that's 3 out of what I'd hope each week is a back 4. Njai keeps scoring, and I don't think his expected minutes are under threat yet, even with Tyler Dibling's arrival. So that's another one. Salah to Haaland, right, that's another 5 players. Evan Nilsson, João Pedro going nowhere. the team overall, Josh King, I'm so happy playing him some weeks, including game week 4 at home to Leeds. So the team's okay. It's just those 2 mid spots and the 1 forward spot, and maybe 1 defenders, right? Which is all sortable. And I still have a decent amount of depth with a playing 8th, right? So the team's okay. And I think going forward, I'll be absolutely fine. That is all she wrote for this one, ladies and gentlemen. I certainly hope you enjoyed, as I did. If you did enjoy, a like on the video, a hype on the video, which you can find by swiping right on the comment section, a subscribe to the channel, all would be greatly appreciated, especially if you've been a long-time viewer. Have a terrific few days. I shall see you very shortly for an international break video where we have a number of things to discuss. Like I said, until then, have a terrific day. Goodbye.